Israel's security cabinet has announced its plan to occupy Gaza in whole, to control the aid distribution completely, and to stay as long as is necessary to get the hostages back and secure Gaza from Hamas. The plan is going to be very, very difficult to execute. I'll talk with Michael Oren, former ambassador of Israel to the United States, about that a little bit later in the program, about the degree of difficulty. I know we're going to be telling you about it on special report tonight as well, which I'm going to join on the panel. Hope you'll tune into that. The big story of the morning is Donald Trump, of course, was in the Oval Office with the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, and he did a gaggle, meaning that the reporters there got to ask him whatever they wanted. First question came, I got to give you the background to this before that. The papal conclave starts in 2 days, I think 2 days. And on the front page of the Financial Times, Vatican pact with Beijing weighs on papal frontrunner. Well, I don't really know that you could guess who a frontrunner is because there are 135 voters and most of them are not even known to the press, so people are just guessing. But Cardinal Pietro Parolin is the Secretary of State, and he's very close to Francis, and he negotiated a deal with the Chicoms that most Chinese Catholics do not like because it gives the Chicoms a role in picking the bishops in China. The old cardinal there, Cardinal Zen, announced it. Many Catholics very unhappy with it. It might turn out to be an obstacle. Meanwhile, over the weekend, Donald Trump posted a pretty funny picture of him dressed as a pope. He gets a question about that, incredibly, in the Oval today, cut number 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some Catholics were not so happy about the image of you looking like the Pope.
Oh, I see. You mean they can't take a joke? You don't mean the Catholics. You mean the fake news media. Not the Catholics loved it. I had nothing to do with it. Somebody made up a picture of me dressed like the Pope, and they put it out on the Internet. That's not me that did it. I have no idea where it came from. Maybe it was AI, but I know nothing about it. I just saw it last evening. Actually, my wife thought it was cute. She said, "Isn't that nice?"
My question about
Actually, I would not be able to be married, though. That would be a lot. I'd have to the best of my knowledge, popes aren't big on getting married, are they? Not that we know of. No. I think it's the fake news media that, they're fakers.
My question, though, sir, was about the fact that it was put out on the White House account. Even though it was AI generated, it was a joke, it was a meme. Does it at all diminish the substance of the official White House account to have it go out on?
Let me answer this as a faithful Catholic. No, it's a dumb question. It's a dumb question. It's a meme. That's really just a dumb question. Let's go to the next question. Cut number 2.
Yeah, please.
What's your expectation for your meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister tomorrow?
I don't know. He's coming to see me. I'm not sure what he wants to see me about, but I guess he wants to make a deal. Everybody does. They all want to make a deal because we have something that they all want. We have something that they all want. China wants to make a deal very badly. You see what's happening to China. China's being decimated, and I don't want that to happen. But they have to make a fair deal. We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year. We were losing think of it, on our trade policies with Biden. We're losing $5 billion a day. I think Josh, as a great businessman, would not let that happen too long, right? How many groups can lose $5 billion a day? If you lose $5 billion one day, that's the end of that company, right? You're fired. He says, "You're fired. Get out of here." So we essentially did that, and we have it down to a very low number. We're doing really well, really well.
And then Roger Goodell announced that the draft is going to D.C. Cut number 3.
Fox News alert and live to the White House where President Trump is now speaking, making a major sports announcement. Roger Goodell from the NFL at his side. Let's listen.
I'm pleased to reveal that the 2027 NFL draft, that's a big thing, will be held right here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., on the National Mall. And you get a little glimpse of it. I was just saying to Roger, I don't think there's ever been anything like that. That's a good idea. In fact, maybe we could use it for other things also. I have an idea. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be something that nobody else will ever be able to duplicate that, I don't suspect. It's very exciting. Every year, hundreds of young football players have their dreams come true as the NFL teams across the land, and you just saw that last week. Select the best young players in America to join their ranks. Hundreds of thousands of football fans will travel all across our country to cheer them on in person. We expect, would you say, more than 100,000 people, I think. What is the capacity would you think it can hold? Because the mall can actually hold up to 1 million people if you go all the way back. What do you think?
Over 3 days, we'll be over 1 million.
Oh, yeah, you're going to be.
I think the Browns are on the clock already, and I'm going to be there for that. I think I'm going to go down to that. Meanwhile, I got a question about reopening Alcatraz. You made a joke about this weekend. Of course, you got a question about it. Cut number 4.
To reopen Alcatraz, how will you use it? How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I guess I was supposed to be a movie maker. We started with the movie making, and we'll end. I mean, it represents something very strong, very powerful in terms of law and order. Our country needs law and order. Alcatraz is, I would say, the ultimate, right? Alcatraz, Sing Sing and Alcatraz, the movies. But it's right now a museum, believe it or not. A lot of people go there. It housed the most violent criminals in the world, and nobody ever escaped. One person almost got there, but they, as you know the story, they found his clothing rather badly ripped up. And it was a lot of shark bites, a lot of problems. Nobody's ever escaped from Alcatraz, and just represented something strong having to do with law and order. We need law and order in this country.
A lot of problems. A lot of problems there with the shark bites. Dwayne's got a lot of problems with shark bites. Cut number 5. They're talking about, though, they've got to get some food into Gaza. The president.
We're going to help the
5.
people of Gaza get some food. People are starving, and we're going to help them get some food. A lot of people are making it very, very bad. If you look, Hamas is making it impossible because they're taking everything that's brought in. But we're going to help the people of Gaza because they're being treated
That's a good effort
Hamas.
to make. He also talked about the film industry and his idea that maybe they ought to tariff films made outside of the United States. That's really going to rock the Canadians. Cut number 8.
Explain a little bit about how you would implement tariffs on the film industry, kind of how that would work.
Well, that's a different story, but our film industry has been decimated by other countries taking them out, and also by incompetence, like in Los Angeles. The governor is a grossly incompetent man. He's just allowed it to be taken away from, Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't do very much of that business. They have the nice sign and everything's good, but they don't do very much. A lot of it's been taken to other countries, and a big proportion. And I'm actually going to meet with some because, there's some advantages, I guess, and I'm not looking to hurt the industry. I want to help the industry. But they're given financing by other countries. They're given a lot of things. And the industry was decimated. If you look at how little is done in this country now, you think we were the ones. We used to do 100, not long ago, 100%. Now we do almost like very little. It's shocking. Are you in that business too? Because he's in so many businesses. You could explain it, but it's not a good situation. So we're going to meet with the industry. I want to make sure they're happy with it because we're all about jobs. That's all what it's very important. It's a big industry. It
does employ a lot of people. They got the grip. They got the assistant grip. They got the grump. That's Dwayne's job. They got the other people like the assistant to the assistant grip. They got the vice grip. If you ever watched a movie role, I watched the end of the movie role. They employ a lot of people, and so it would be good to get some of that back in L.A. He also got a question about paying illegals to self-deport. Cut number 6.
What we thought we'd do is a self-deport, where we're going to pay each one a certain amount of money, and we're going to get them a beautiful flight back to where they came from, and they have a period of time. And if they make it, we're going to work with them so that maybe someday, with a little work, they can come back in if they're good people, if they're the kind of people that we want in our company, industrious people that could love our country. And if they're not, they won't. But it will give them a path to becoming, to coming back into the country. If they miss that limit, they're going to be taken out of our country.
I want to complete the gaggle that Donald Trump held in the Oval today with one more Q&A. This is about the Nord Stream pipeline, how it kept blowing up. It was running from Russia to Germany. It kept getting blown up. Cut number 7.
2.5 years ago, the Nord Stream pipeline blew up. Yeah. And despite what people like John Brennan and all the hawks said, you were one person who said Russia probably did not blow up its own pipeline.
Yeah, if you can believe. They said Russia blew it up, yeah.
And so I'm wondering now that you're president, if you would consider launching a formal investigation into what happened there and who actually did blow it up.
Well, probably if I asked certain people, I'd be able to tell you without having to waste a lot of money on an investigation. But I think a lot of people know who blew it up. But I was the one that blew it up originally because I wouldn't let it be built. And then when Biden got in, he allowed it to be built. And it's very interesting. But I think Russia, with the price of oil right now, oil's gone down, I think we're in a good position to settle. They want to settle. Ukraine wants to settle. If I weren't president, nobody would be settling. They're losing 5,000 people a day. Think of it. Here we talk about football. They're losing 5,000 people on average a week. Mostly Russian soldiers and Ukrainian soldiers, 5,000 a week, not including people that are, killed as missiles go into areas that they shouldn't be. It's a very terrible thing, and I think we've come a long way, and it could be something will happen, but hopefully it will. As you know, President Putin just announced a 3-day ceasefire, which doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot if you knew where we started from, because they were not. We had a president that for 3 years didn't speak to Putin, and it all shouldn't have happened. This is a war that should have never happened, and you're going to be very disappointed when you find out the real number of people that were killed. It's far greater, many times greater, I believe, but far greater than the numbers that you're putting out. It's a very, very deadly, horrible war.
The president also sat down with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press this weekend and got asked about the reconciliation bill, which is the most important part of his legacy. Got to get that done, cut number 9.
We're talking about the great, big, beautiful bill, that we're trying to get passed. It'll be the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country, and hopefully it'll get done, and the Democrats are fighting us, and if it doesn't get done, it's going to be a 68% tax increase. So that's going to be the Democrats. But I think we're going to have it done. I think the Republicans are going to vote for it. And it'll be the most consequential bill, I think, in the history of our country.
Leader Thune says he wants to get it done by July 4th.
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible?
I think it is, and I think he's doing a fantastic job. And Mike Johnson, Speaker, is doing a fantastic job, and they're both getting together well. There's great unity in the Republican Party. The Republican Party is a much different party than it was.
He's right about that. Cut number 10, though, talking with Kristen about how the media treats people. Cut number 10.
I want to treat people fairly, whether they voted for me or not. I want to have a unified country. It's very hard because the media is so fake, including, like even the way you ask questions. Every question is asked in a negative vein. There's a toy company that took a toddler's, whatever, but you don't talk about the fact that gasoline is down at numbers that nobody believes possible. You know why they're down, by the way? Drill, baby, drill. We're drilling like crazy right now.
We try to make sure every question is fair, Mr. President.
Look, every question you ask says a very negative slant.
No, but look, I'm just curious.
I'm fine for responding to you. I don't think you're very difficult at all to respond to be honest with you. But you know what? You should ask some positive things.
Positive questions. That's not on the agenda. I do want to play what he had to say about Iran, because this matters a lot. Cut number 12.
Is the goal of these talks limiting Iran's nuclear program or total dismantlement?
Total dismantlement.
That's all you'll accept?
That's all I'd accept. Now, there's a new theory going out there that Iran would be allowed to have civilian, meaning to make electricity. But I say, they have so much oil, what do they need it for? But, I've seen it with other states where they're looking to do something and they have a lot of oil. Iran has tremendous energy. I put sanctions, if you know that. I put pretty strong sanctions on 2 days ago on the oil. It's a very simple deal. I want Iran to be really successful, really great, really fantastic. The only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon. Okay. If they want to be successful, that's okay. I want them to be so successful. And the Iranian people are incredible. I just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon because the world will be destroyed.
Hey, by the way, he's right. They're fanatics. Can't give them a nuclear weapon. It would have been used in Israel already. Let's cut over to Scott Bessent. The Secretary of the Treasury was on CNBC talking about the economy and how it's going generally. Cut number 15.
What I've been talking about is reprivatizing the economy. So on one side, we're going to be bringing down government spending, which has been crowding out the private sector. We're also going to be shedding excess labor on the government side. Then on the other side, we have a substantial financial deregulatory agenda coming from, we put a lot of new regulators in place so the private sector can re-leverage, and we're putting a special focus on community banks, small regional banks, which were very near what I would call an extinction event in the next 4 or 5 years. So the idea is to get them lending again too.
Good for, I think Besant is the superstar there. Burgum's awfully good. There are a lot of, Pambondi's awfully good. He's very, very good. Have I told you that I've added consumer cellular to my life? I am no longer a hostage only to big cellular. And you shouldn't be either. Do you even know how much you spend on your cellular phone? Do you have any idea what your cell phone costs? If you're a big data user, you can get 2 lines from consumercellular.com/Hugh. consumercellular.com/Hugh. 2 lines, unlimited data, $60 a month. And you get the second month free. So that's 2 lines for $30 for the first 2 months. consumercellular.com/Hugh. You can have savings without sacrifice. But if you're not a big data user, you're not downloading a lot of movies, you're not spending an endless amount of time scrolling, doom scrolling online, you're not storing elaborate videos online, then go and ask them for one of the cheap plans that doesn't use much, like the 8 gig plan, because they can be very inexpensive. consumercellular.com/Hugh, or you can call them 1-800-411-4454. Just ask yourself, how much am I spending? If you don't know, go find your consumer cellular bill somewhere, whatever you're paying for your cell service somewhere, and then call up Consumer Cellular and say, here's what I'm paying, I'd like to pay less, and talk to them. And you'll find out, you probably don't know how many gigabytes you're paying for. Big Cell likes to sell you unlimited data plans. People get worried about, I don't want to get charged too much data, and then they use like a fraction of what they could be using, and they don't use it. Get one of the slimmed down gig plans, 8 gigabytes a month is their cheapest one, I believe, and that should serve most of you over 50. But whether you're young or old or in between, whether you're using a lot or whether you want to keep your number or get a new number, whether you want to keep your data, get new data, start by calling 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454, or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. That second month is free on the 2 lines for $60 a month, unlimited data. That's 1-800-411-4454. Let's go back to President Trump's interview with Christian Welker yesterday. Cut number 11.
I want to be a great president. I will have served. Hopefully, everything will go well. I feel very good. I just did a physical. I took, unlike all other presidents, I took cognitive tests and I aced it. I got 100% correct. And one doctor said, there were numerous doctors watching. And he said, I've never seen that before. Biden didn't take a cognitive. He couldn't have gotten the first question right. But I came out great with the physical, both physically and mentally. And I just want to serve, do a great job. I'll be an 8-year president. I'll be a 2-term president. I always thought that was very important, to be honest with you. You know, if you look at President Polk, he was a 1-termer and he did some great things, actually. Pretty good president. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but there's something about being a 2-term president that was very important to me.
Yeah, there is. It's like you get more done. Cut number 13. Our machine freeze on us. Cut number 13. We have it's Dwayne's machine, and I was trying to do something here. I was trying to get every cut that Dwayne did for me done in a half an hour. Yeah, cut number 13.
What did you say to Jeff Bezos?
He's just a very nice guy. We have a relationship. I asked him about it. He said, well, I don't want to do that. And he took it off immediately.
So he changed course. And will you take that same tactic with other CEOs if you
I'll
feel
always
like...
call people if I disagree with them. If I think that somebody's doing something that's incorrect, wrong, or maybe hurtful to the country, I'll call. Absolutely. Wouldn't you want me to call? Biden wouldn't call because he didn't know what was happening, but I do.
Cut number 14.
Are you looking for a new Secretary of Defense, Mr.
No,
President?
not even a little bit. No. Pete's going to be great.
His job is safe right now?
We're doing a fantastic job against the Houthis, who like blowing ships up and watching them sink in the ocean. We're hitting them very hard. No, he's doing a very good job.
His job is safe right now?
Totally safe.
That's 3 times she asked. 3 times he said yes. Scott Bessent on CNBC. One more, Scott Bessent. Cut number 16.
I can say that I am highly confident that we have 18 important trading partners. We'll put China to the side. The 17 other partners, many of them have approached us with the very good trade proposals. President Trump is going to be involved in all of those. He will be the final decision maker. And we'll see where that goes. But I think that at the end of this, even if we have tariffs still in place, because the non-tariff trade barriers are coming down, because we could see an end to some of the currency manipulation, the unfair subsidy of labor and capital from the other countries, we could see the more frictionless trade.
And I think that's great. Now, Generalissimo, if you're there, I'm wondering if My PhD Weight Loss, our great sponsor, if it left you a little without energy. Did you get nothing to eat this weekend?
What's that?
I mean, My PhD Weight Loss, 864.
644.
1900, that's
864.
644.
1900.
I'm wondering if it left you with no food this weekend because I've gone through all the cuts. I've used every cut on the cut sheet, so I thought maybe you were a little out of energy today.
No, not at all. I could have
They're all
given
gone.
Oh.
16 cuts. I know I shouldn't have left it up to you, but I was wondering if maybe you had raisins or something this weekend. That was it.
No. I was listening to you not mention the Salem News Channel 1,000 times.
I did mention the Salem News Channel 1,000 times. I want to know why you did not. Why you only got 16. You're not weak. You're not deprived of food. My PhD Weight Loss give you enough food.
I am not deprived of food. I am not. No, I'm sustaining myself quite nicely. Thank you.
864
644
1900. So when you're on the My PhD Weight Loss, you don't run out of gas and energy. That doesn't explain this.
How many cuts do you want?
No, I was just wondering because we're out of cuts. Like 3 segments and we're out of cuts.
Okay, so this was one of those days where you decided not to do any of your own prep, right?
My PhDweightloss.com has left you prone, I think. I'm afraid about that. You've been on the program for 2.5 years and you've kept the weight off, but are you without energy?
You exhaust me, but that's got nothing to do with my energy level.
Yeah, but obviously I do exhaust you because there's absolutely nothing left to play to the audience. I have to play it a second time. I'm just wondering if you're okay. You feeling faint? Do you have to sit down?
I am sitting down, you dope.
I'm just wondering, because are you pale? Would someone go take his pulse? Because we got 16 cuts and we're already done. Show's like one third of 1 hour done, and we're out of material. The good news is I have done show prep, and I will bring it to you right after this. Don't go anywhere, America, because even though Dwayne's lying down on the job, it's because myPhDweightloss.com gives him plenty of energy, but he has to follow it. 864-644-1900. Go and lose 50 pounds like Dwayne did, and still do your job. Hope you are listening on the Salem Radio Network, one of my great affiliates. We added a new affiliate in Jacksonville, WBOB. I'll be talking about that a little bit next hour. I read in the Wall Street Journal today, and I just had to say, why do people live in Massachusetts? I don't know. $1 billion tax bill is looming over Boston homeowners, according to the Wall Street Journal this morning. The value of some Boston office buildings has tumbled by 50%, causing homeowners to pick up the tax burden. Now, my first question is, okay, I understand why COVID crushed the real estate market downtown Boston like it has in many downtown. But why does that, what's that got to do with the homeowners? And it turns out that Boston's office buildings have taken a big valuation hit. This is causing homeowners like Paulette Durrett to dig deeper into their wallets. When the value of the city's commercial buildings fall, that places a higher tax burden on Boston residential owners. My next question is why? Why does that happen? Why don't they cut the government? Since it can take years for tax assessments to change, tax bills earlier this year were the first since the outbreak of COVID-19 that boosted residential tax rates because of a major decline in commercial values. Now, that actually doesn't make any sense because the housing market for individuals has got nothing to do with the office market. And Tourette, who's 76 years old, said her annual bill will now be close to $1,600, double, almost more than double, from about $720. And she's thinking about it. She needs to replace her 15-year-old car. Stewart is one of tens of thousands of Boston homeowners who received bigger than expected tax bill, in large part because Boston office buildings have tumbled in value. Again, they don't explain why, and then we get to this sentence. Boston, like other cities, could adjust by cutting budgets for public schools, police, and fire or other public service, but the city doesn't want to take those steps. They want to increase the taxes on homeowners. And so they're doing it. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu said the recent tax increase, which averaged more than 9% annualized on over one half of single-family homeowners, is adding to the pressure on households barely keeping it together. Tell you what, cut the budget, Mayor Wu. This is not that difficult. So you're not making as much money as you used to see. Median decline in commercial property tax value are projected from 0.9% to 3.2% of total city revenue. So it's not even that much of city revenue. So I don't even know. You can't take a 3% hit in your commercial revenue tax. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, that's Mayor Wu explaining the state of the state, which is that they're out of money, and it's because they don't know how to cut anything. And I just wonder as I wander out under the sky, if you could send Doge in there, do you think maybe they could balance the Boston budget without raising taxes on homeowners? I think they could. Also, Bill Ackman, Harvard grad, backs Harvard losing tax-exempt status, calls for board overhaul. The billionaire investor says it's time for a change in leadership at the Ivy League school. He's right. Hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman thinks it would be fair for Harvard University to lose its tax-exempt status, but doesn't think it will come to that. The investor and Harvard alum on CNBC today criticized Harvard Corporation's leadership, including Penny Pritzker. Time for a change in leadership in the board at Harvard. President Trump renewed his threat to revoke the school's tax-exempt status in a Truth Social post. It's what they deserve. Now, that wasn't a formal directive to the IRS to do it, but I saw a bad argument online this weekend that presidents cannot do that. That's actually not correct. Presidents cannot order audits of individuals. That was put in to protect individuals from the wrath of a president directing the IRS to audit individuals that they don't like. Applying the civil rights law is actually part of the president's responsibility to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. You're not supposed to get a tax-exempt status if you're racist. That's why Bob Jones University lost its tax-exempt status in 1983, because it was not complying with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. For the president to direct the IRS to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status does not violate the statute that prohibits him from ordering an audit directed at a personal enemy or someone he doesn't like or someone he saw who insulted him. You know, insult comic. He can't call up and say, audit Dwayne. You know, if I were in charge of the IRS, I'd audit Dwayne, but I'm not. But they could certainly pull Dwayne's tax-exempt status if he had one. I don't think he does have one. It's different. So everyone this weekend, all the high and mighty, chest-puffing Twitter lawyers were out there saying you can't do this, it's prohibited by law. So I actually went and looked up the statute. It's got nothing to do with pulling tax-exempt status. It's got to do with the president or vice president ordering a revenge tax audit. This is not that. This is the president worried that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is being violated, not just against the Jews on campus, but also against Asian Americans who are not being admitted in numbers equal to their merit because of, as admitted in court, Harvard was managing the racial composition of their school. And they did not want, I think it was 15%, they didn't want more than 15% Asian Americans. Might have been 18%. Well, that's a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as well as the Constitution's guarantees of equal protection. And that was decided by the Supreme Court in 2023. The Jew hatred began after 10/7 when Jewish students at the university became unsafe. We actually have tape of them being assaulted. And for the president to say they should lose their tax-exempt status is not illegal, does not violate that section, has nothing to do with that section. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you can see, in fact, there's the assault occurring right there. The big kid with the dreads actually got a glowing write-up in the Harvard Law Review, I'm told, or in the Harvard Law School magazine. Made him into a little bit of a hero. I'm here to do a market report brought to you by our friend American Federal. AmericanFederal.com, owned and operated by Nick Grovich. Nick and I had an exchange over the weekend because I am mystified by the market. Today, as we near the close, about 5 minutes left in trading, the Dow is down 0.25%. The S&P is down about 0.64%. The NASDAQ is down 0.75%, 0.76%. And gold is up 3% to $3,343 an ounce. $3,343 an ounce. If you want to buy gold, you call 800-221-7694. That's 1-800-221-7694. Nick got a wonderful email from one of his clients who found out about him from listening to my show about how wonderful and professional they were and how they love Nick and his team and all these great glowing things. And I'm glad that people do send that, and I love it when Nick forwards it to me, but I'm not surprised. Ever since I met Nick, I knew the reputation. He'd been sponsoring Dennis for years, and Dennis has always said, straight up, straight shooter, transparent, buys and sells gold, charges a commission, tells you the price up front. The more you buy, the smaller the commission. He'll buy your gold from you, give you a fair price, less a commission. It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing magic about it. But the gold market's been just a roller coaster over the last year and a half. And here it is at $3,343 an ounce today. And I wrote him yesterday before it opened up 3% today. And I said, you know, you're a prophet, dude. And I don't do financial advice or predictions because I don't know from Adam. Talking with Harry and Savannah over the weekend, and he was explaining to me a couple of different models that finance people use, and that's not what I do. What I do is report and do political analysis. I don't give financial advice, but I said, boy, gold is just all over the place. He said, you're telling me. And Nick said, look, it's funny. Some people wait to buy in the dip that never comes, and some people buy on a regular basis, and some people are in between. They buy emotionally, or they sell when they're up against the wall, whatever. Nick is there for you, 1-800-221-7694, or go to AmericanFederal.com. If you had bought gold 5 years ago, you'd be dancing in the street right now. I can't guarantee that that's going to continue to happen. I do think a $37 trillion debt does make gold look really valuable to some people because they wonder about the stability of the currency and whether or not it's going to be there. But generally, it's just been moving up incrementally, month over month, month over month. Over the past 100 years, and past performance is no guarantee of future performance, gold more than kept pace with inflation. So it's a hedge. It's part of a good diversified portfolio. And if you finally decide to pull the trigger and you're not going to wait for a $100 dip, just call up Nick, 1-800-221-7694. Tell him I sent you. Or go to AmericanFederal.com online. AmericanFederal.com. American Federal coin and bullion, been in business for 42 years. You can trust Nick Rovich and his team. We have another new affiliate today, and I'm playing Allman Brothers because they got their start in Jacksonville, Florida. WBOB AM 600, 101 FM Talk Radio. WBOB, welcome. I'm glad to be talking to you finally. Yeah, I've always kind of felt bad that, the big Jacksonville Jazz Festival is every May. It's coming up May 26th and 27th this year. They got two stages, the swinging stage and the grooving stage. And you're going to find this hard to believe, Dwayne. I have never been invited to sit in at the Jacksonville Jazz Festival. You may not believe that. WBOB.
I do believe that you have not been invited.
I have not been invited. It's hard for some people to grasp that of every festival that I've played, maybe Andrazik is gone, but I have not been invited to play at the Jacksonville Jazz Festival. But I'm still going to promote the heck out of it because I love Jacksonville. Duval. That's when they were doing the draft, and Jacksonville's in Duval County. That's why they say Duval. For those of you who are confused, like the Steelers fans, where's the Duval team play?
I'm surprised you haven't been invited. Lots of people have.
Yeah, I just, they've overlooked it, or they thought I was too busy. But WBOB, now that I'm on the air on WBOB, that might change. AM 600, I want you to know, this is a blend of everything. Now, this is not the first broadcast day of the month. I wasn't here on the first broadcast day of the month. I was in Savannah, which is north of where y'all are. So I wasn't able to tell you about myself, so I want to tell you about myself so that you know who you're listening to, Jacksonville. I am a son of Ohio, so I know something about football. We invented it there. Massillon, Ohio, Paul Brown, the whole 9-yard cradle of coaches. And I am Catholic educated. I am a Roman Catholic. I'm an evangelical Roman Catholic Presbyterian. That means I go to Mass on Saturday. I go to the Presbyterian Church on Sunday with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt's been my wife for 43 years. This show has been on the air 24 years and 10 months plus a week. We'll have our 25th anniversary on July the 10th, WBOB. You've missed 24 years and 10 months, so I got to work a lot longer for you to keep up. After doing my 18 years in Warren's finest parochial schools, John F. Kennedy High School and Blessed Sacrament and the rest, went off to Harvard in the 70s before it became diseased and broken. Had a great education and great time. Lived with Democrats, loved Democrats. I was there in 1976 when 17 Democrats ran for president. They all came to Harvard. I saw them all. Birch Bayh and Scoop Jackson, all of them, they'd come by and I'd go see them. I'd listen to them. They're all wrong, but I went. Ronald Reagan didn't come and Jerry Ford didn't come because Ford was going to win the Massachusetts primary, and he did. And I was on the Ford side of the 76 campaign. Mark Levin never lets me forget that. But I like Jerry Ford. Jerry Ford was from the Midwest. Graduated from Harvard in 78. Didn't have a job. Didn't get into Harvard Law School or Michigan Law School. I only wanted to go to 2 law schools. Didn't get into either of them. So I got in my Dodge Dart, and I'm going to mention my Dodge Dart later to Joe Concha. It's coming up in hour number 3 because he took a swipe at the Dodge Dart in his new book, The Greatest Comeback Ever. And I thought the Dodge Dart was a fine car. And I drove across the country, and I went to San Clemente, and I worked for David Eisenhower for about 10 weeks. And I went to work for Richard Nixon for 2 years as a ghostwriter and researcher on the book The Real War, and then the second book after the memoir Leaders. And after he moved to New York, I was in San Clemente. And San Clemente was wonderful. San Clemente is the greatest place in the world. Met the fetching Mrs. Hewitt there. Had a grand old time in San Clemente, and then President Nixon shattered my dreams and hopes and said, we're moving back to New York. So I went with him, and New York City in 1980 was not a pleasant place, especially if you're poor. I was making a writer's salary, right? RN was generous, but he wasn't dumb. He wasn't giving money away to 23-year-olds. So after about 6 months, I went and saw the old man, and I said, look, I got to go to law school. I got into Michigan this time. He said, I knew you'd go. New York is for the rich and for the very, very poor. And so go with God. Off I went to Michigan Law School, got out of Michigan Law School, clerked on the D.C. Circuit for a couple of judges named Roger Robb and George McKinnon. One was sick, the other was gone, so I did some work for Judge Scalia, Judge Ginsburg, Judge Bork, Judge Spots Robinson, Judge Skelly Wright. They all gave me cases when my judge was sick. And after that, I was supposed to go into Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher and do big law, but I was saved by that by William French Smith offered me a job as special assistant to the Attorney General. And I enjoyed it. It was counterintelligence, preparing the warrants for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. And that was great. That was good fun. I didn't really do much work. The FBI would bring you the warrant. There wasn't a national security division then. There was just the FBI and one special assistant to the AG. And that was me for both General Smith and Ed Meese. Great man, Ed Meese. Absolutely great American. And did that, and then the phone rang. It was this guy named Hauser. He's a bad man. If you're going to play golf in Florida, just be careful. Ricardo's Cuban hot dog stand and driving range. And he'll want strokes. Don't give him strokes. Ricardo was working then, and he said, come work for a guy named Fred Fielding. I'll keep him away from you. You won't have to worry about him yelling at you, because Fred would throw things. And I would stay away from the West Wing, but I'd hang out over and protect the seal of the presidency of the United States. I was really good at that. After that, I went into the agencies and did a general counsel tour at a couple of places. Ended up finally at OPM. If you hang around administration long enough, you get promoted way above your age and ability. So I ended up being confirmed by the United States Senate to be the deputy director of the Office of Personnel Management. So I was actually running OPM. I know a little bit about how the federal government works. So I was running OPM, Federal Employee Health Benefit Program, the Retirement Thrift Savings Program, the CFC, all that stuff. I had that gig. Got done, and the fetching Mrs. Hewitt's a California girl. We went back to California and raised our 3 kids out there. They all went to great public schools in California. They have now all left. And they had a great education, but the schools are falling apart. California was great. I met my wife at a Pete Wilson fundraiser, and Pete was a great governor. Had a wonderful time, and out of the blue, I got a call from a radio station. Did I want to do talk radio in 1990? KFI, AM 640, more stimulating talk radio. I said, what's it pay? And it was some good money. I said, sure, that beats working. So I got on the radio, and I never stopped practicing law until 2016. I retired. And I kept doing radio, and then I added television for PBS in 1992. It was before cable. Cable got started in 1980, but Fox News got started in, 94, 96. I did PBS from 1992 to 2002, nightly news and public affairs show for LA. Did a national show for PBS, and Salem called me up in 2000, and I've been on the air with Salem since then. Salem News Channel started a couple of years ago. We moved seamlessly to that. I'm a Fox News contributor. I'll be on Special Report tonight. Written about 14 books. And I started teaching con law and First and 14th Amendment administrative law, environmental law at the Fowler School of Law at Chapman University. I write for the Washington Examiner. I write for the Washington Post until my very long fuse kind of blew, somewhat infamously, on their broadcast that nobody watched, but I'd had it, so I quit the Post. But I've written for everyone, write books, talked about politics all the time, have a good time. When you listen to me, you get the news, you get facts, you get clips. I work all night long to do a cut sheet, but once in a while I take a night off, and then I say, Dwayne, would you do the cut sheet? And he gave me 4 cuts today. It's really very sad. It was a pretty easy day to do cuts, too, because the president was in the Oval with Roger Goodell. Nobody asked Roger Goodell why he hates the Cleveland Browns. I should add, there may be a little bit of sports talk here. To my Jacksonville audience, BOB, we have your first-round draft choice. And so I hate to tell you this, but I want you to lose every game. And that'll be fine. You got Travis Hunter, and he's going to be great. The Browns got your first-round draft choice. And maybe Trevor and Travis will be the greatest thing to light up, but there are 24 people it takes, plus special teams to play football. I think the Browns made a great deal, and I think we're going to the Super Bowl this year and next, and it's going to be great. And the draft is going to be in D.C. next April, which is, I live in the Beltway most of the year. I have a studio Beltway, which I'm in right now. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, I'm also have a studio out west. I have a studio up north because you can't be here in the winter or the summer. You can only be here in the fall and the spring. Otherwise, it's an unlivable city. And Jefferson pulled the wool over Hamilton's eyes when he did that deal. Nobody should thank him for that deal. But I am here to tell you every day what is going on. And what is going on today is that Israel has announced they are going in big to Gaza, and they're going to stay until it's done. And when I come back, I'll give you some details about that. If you're listening, Yoni, give me a call. For the benefit of the WBOB audience in Jacksonville, Yoni was a member of the Israeli Defense Forces in some capacity, and he's fought in Gaza. Very first time I've never been to Gaza. I've been to Israel a couple of times, but I've never been to Gaza. He said, you don't want to go to Gaza, and he explained it to me. And it's not that big. I don't know why it's going to take so long, but it's going to take a very long time, and it's going to be ugly and awful. I'll tell you about it when we come back. But that's my bio for the benefit of WBOB in Jacksonville. Welcome aboard. I am so glad you've joined the show. The number is 1-800-520-1234. If you're from Jacksonville, I'll take a call from you. 1-800-520-1234. Nobody else is allowed to call. You have to be from Jacksonville. Harley, open up the phones, but only for Jacksonville people. 1-800-520-1234. Senator Tom Cotton represents the great state of Arkansas. He's a member of the Armed Services Committee. He is chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, good friend of the program. Senator Cotton, I want you to go back to your Army days when you were with 101st in Baghdad. Israel announced today that they're going to fully occupy and control Gaza, which is 141 square miles. That's about the size of Manhattan, and throw in Brooklyn and the Queens. How difficult a job is that?
Hugh, it's going to be a very challenging job, but it's also a necessary job, and it's one that I'm confident the IDF and the security services of Israel are up to. Gaza is still controlled by Hamas. They're trying to regain their strength, and Israel has to root them out entirely if they want to live at peace in the future and not risk another October 7th style attack. So it's going to be a challenging operation, but obviously the IDF operating not just in Gaza for the last 18 months, but being battle-hardened for decades is up to the task.
Now, when you're in Baghdad, obviously they did not have, or maybe they did and I didn't know about it, a subterranean network of tunnels. Any idea how you go about securing the above-ground space when the underground space is full of guys with Kalashnikovs?
No, not to my knowledge. At least in our sector, we never faced that kind of very dangerous network of tunnels. I think at this point, you can say that Israeli Defense Forces as well as the intelligence services have a fairly good idea about the extent of that tunnel network. Not an entirely good idea, not a perfect knowledge of it. So they'll come into portals that they have not yet mapped out. But it starts with securing all the portals that are mapped out and then very promptly securing them in ways that are irreversible. And you can imagine what you can do with that, whether it's iron gates or concrete or what have you. And then there's techniques for tunnel warfare as well. We shouldn't forget, of course, there's still hostages being held there. And hopefully the pressure that Israel puts on Hamas in Gaza in the days and the weeks ahead can save some more of those hostages' lives.
Now, Senator, the Ben Gurion Airport was almost directly hit by the Houthis. Missed it, hit an empty field, thank goodness, but almost direct hit on them. They could try the same thing with our carriers. We got 2 in the Gulf, and we're hitting them every day, but they are still able to get off a ballistic missile. Is bombing the Houthis the real solution, or is that solution in Iran?
Well, ultimately, as the president has said, as the Secretary of Defense said just last week, this comes from Iran. Where did a bunch of goat-herding rebels in Yemen get land attack cruise missiles and ballistic missiles? They got them from Iran. First, they were provided them directly, and over time, they were trained and taught how to manufacture them themselves. We have some intelligence gaps still in Yemen, in most part, because Joe Biden's administration deprioritized intelligence collections against those rebels, but the Trump administration is rightly trying to rebuild that intelligence picture very quickly so we can finish off these rebels in Yemen, and not just their fighters, but their weapons depots and their manufacturing sites. But as the president said, when you see a missile coming out of Yemen, you should really think of it as coming out of Iran, because if it wasn't for Iran financing these rebels and providing them the weapons and teaching them how to make their own weapons, they wouldn't be able to attack our ships at sea. They wouldn't be able to attack our friends in Israel.
Okay, now here's what the president told Kristen Welker this weekend about Iran. Cut number 12, please, Harley.
Is the goal of these talks limiting Iran's nuclear program or total dismantlement?
Total dismantlement.
That's all you'll accept?
That's all I'd accept. Now, there's a new theory going out there that Iran would be allowed to have civilian, meaning to make electricity. But I say, they have so much oil, what do they need it for? But I've seen it with other states where they're looking to do something and they have a lot of oil. Iran has tremendous energy. I put sanctions, if you know that. I put pretty strong sanctions on 2 days ago on the oil. It's a very simple deal. I want Iran to be really successful, really great, really fantastic. The only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon. If they want to be successful, that's okay. I want them to be so successful. And you know, the Iranian people are incredible. I just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon because the world will be destroyed.
So, Senator Cotton, does that mean to your ears that they have to turn over every bit of enriched uranium that they produced and destroy their centrifuges?
Hugh, I think that means not just to my ears, but anyone who can understand plain English. And that's what the president specializes in. And he's said this for a decade now. He doesn't speak like other Republican presidents in the past have, in which they said, well, we might have a deal, but if it's a bad deal, we'll have to keep all options on the table. No, he says you're either going to get a good deal in which you can live happily without death, or there will be bombing. It's just as plain as day. And he laid out the contours there of what he said for 10 years a good deal is. Iran cannot have centrifuges and enrichment capabilities. They have no reason to enrich uranium other than to build a weapon. And as the Secretary of State said last week, it really doesn't matter if they have the ability to enrich to 3.67% or 20 or 60 or 90 or anything else. If they have the centrifuges and they have the enriched uranium, they have a path to a nuclear weapon. If they don't have the centrifuges and they don't have the uranium, then they don't have a path to a nuclear weapon. And that's why the president has been so consistent and so clear, as he was yesterday on Meet the Press.
So how long does it take to get to impasse, do you think? To me, it seems like you could ask them, let's see you destroy the centrifuges and put it on tape, and we want to be there with you and give us the uranium, or don't. It doesn't seem like it should take very long, does it?
It shouldn't take very long, Hugh, and Iran has consistently refused to end its enrichment program and to turn over its enriched uranium and its centrifuges for at least a decade in which I've been working to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. But, you know, back in the era of Obama's negotiations, many countries in the region said, well, whatever you agree to with Iran, you would have to grant us as well. So, for instance, Saudi Arabia would say, well, we would have to get the right to enrich uranium and get centrifuges and just be a few steps away from a nuclear weapon if you gave that to your arch enemy, Iran. You might turn it the other way and say, well, there are countries in the region like the United Arab Emirates who have civilian nuclear power, who have agreements with the United States about that nuclear power, and those are considered the gold standard. So we have that already packaged up. You might put it to the Ayatollahs and say, well, if you're serious and genuine and all you want is a civilian nuclear power, how about you get what these other countries have and see what they say? I think that would be very quickly and easily calling their bluff.
I hope they do that. Very quickly, Senator, from your position on Senate Intel without compromise, are you relaxing about the India-Pakistan confrontation, or are you still on edge about that?
Well, I'm never fully relaxed about tensions between India and Pakistan, Hugh, and it's probably the one potential point of tension in the world that I pay close attention to, and most normal Americans don't think about it because they're thinking, understandably, about Iran's nuclear program or the war in Ukraine. But there's long, deep, simmering tensions between those two countries, and they're both nuclear armed now. So it's something that I always pay close attention to, and I know the president and the senior leaders in his administration are working on that very carefully to try to defuse those tensions and avoid any kind of conflict there.
We'll keep an eye on that. Thank you, Senator Cotton. Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. Pleasure. Special welcome to WBOB in Jacksonville, 600 AM, and we are so glad that you're here. Jonathan Williams joins me most week. He is the principal tax economist. He's president of the American Legislative Exchange Council and their principal economist, so you can follow him on X at Tax Economist. Jonathan, my wife and I met you this weekend down in Savannah. You were at the Job Creators Network, and she said, that's really not really fair that he gets the weekend off and his wife gets the little kids for 3 days. So I hope you're doing your part the rest of the week.
Oh, you better believe it. My wife is a saint, and it was great to meet your better half as well.
Thank you. Now, I want to ask you about this story in the Wall Street Journal. A $1 billion tax bill is looming over home buyers. Now, I know when you do Rich States, Poor States, and people can get their own copy at richstatespoorstates.com, you take into account property taxes. Do you take into account year over year when something like this happens and the city of Boston shifts their commercial shortfall onto their residential homeowners?
Yeah, you better believe it. I mean, we in rich states, poor states, you can see how your state's property tax burden stacks up against the other 49. And as we've been talking with state legislators, Hugh, around the country over the last couple of years, almost the number one issue for everyone right now is just this huge assessment increases that are going on in property taxes across the country. And it's one of the very many issues that we track that, Americans continue to vote with their feet away from high tax states like California and New York and Illinois and go to places that actually value economic opportunity and give people a better quality of life at a lower cost of life. And property taxes are one of those ways, Hugh, that people see it. It was where the rubber hits the road. Some people have it in their escrow payment, in their mortgage. But if you're cutting a check every year for the price of big government at the local level. And that's, by the way, who's driving these property tax burdens. It's local governments that are spending too much money. They might be trying to blame the state or blame the feds. It is the local government in many cases that's driving this. That's actually where the blame needs to be. And the more important piece is, Hugh, is it needs to be real transparency across the country. And that's what ALEC is doing. And we have some great models, such as our Utah model. Of course, Utah is the number one state, again, in rich states, poor states. And one of the reasons why is they've actually tackled this property tax problem.
Now, California tackled the property tax problem in 1978 with Prop 13. Ever since then, the state legislature has been trying to work its way around it. But I've never seen anything like this story, Jonathan. $1 billion shortfall because the commercial sector fell apart in downtown Boston, and they're just shifting it onto residential homeowners. I don't know how people can afford that. To take $1 billion and spread it out over residences? Have you ever heard of anything like that before?
Well, I mean, we've seen some shifts of property taxes, but that's extreme. And you have to ask yourself the question is, why did that happen? Why is there not commercial activity going on in downtown Boston? And as most big government problems, they create other big government problems, right? And so what is it that drove businesses out of Boston and out of Massachusetts broadly? Why is it that people are moving away? It's their big government, high regulation, high tax burden environment. Then, of course, then creates this cascading issue of problems where then they look to shift the tax burden onto those remaining taxpayers in the state. It's something we see time and time again from the states that have the big issues with out-migration.
Now, I noticed that in richstatespoorstates.com, New Hampshire usually does pretty well. Why doesn't everyone move there and just commute? Because you can go to Vermont, you can go to Maine, you can go to Massachusetts. They're surrounded by high-tax states. New Hampshire manages to make it work without raising taxes. Do they always win New England?
Yeah, they do. Although, that's it's not saying a whole lot to say you're the best of New England, but New Hampshire is obviously live free or die. We were with Governor Sununu this weekend, and no income tax, no state sales tax, an incredible economic opportunity model. I mean, part of the issue is when workers then, if they were to work in another state and live in New Hampshire, all these other states try to get their greedy hands on that money to say, hey, you earned it in our state, so we're going to tax you with our income tax, even if they live in New Hampshire. So that's how states like Massachusetts, that, by the way, have been raising taxes, have the new millionaires tax that they just adopted just recently. That's how they try to get them.
Oh.
So what happens, though, businesses shift to New Hampshire where then their workers can take advantage of that no income tax treatment.
All right, last thing I want to ask about rich states, poor states. And if you're listening, you can get a free copy. John will hand deliver it. I mean, he'll hand write it and he'll address it and he'll autograph it for you. richstatespoorstates.com. Do you figure in the cost of homeowners insurance? Because I was talking to a Floridian this weekend about how prohibitively expensive homeowners insurance is becoming in coastal zones. Does that figure into rich states, poor states as well?
Not yet, but this is another one that on this show we've identified, I think, Hugh, as we're looking at continuing to build out what does it mean to be a competitive states and what are those policies that matter for economic growth and opportunity. I think it's really hard to ignore the insurance costs these days, isn't it?
Yeah, you're gonna be up all night in the library there at ALEC. American Legislative Exchange Councils, where John is the president and leading economist. Go to alec.com/Hugh, ALEC.com/Hugh to get their State of the States newsletter, and go to Rich States, Poor States for your free volume comparing all 50 states, quality of life, cost of living. You want to give it to your teenagers as they plan their life out. Jonathan, good to see you. A special welcome to our new audience in Jacksonville, Florida, on AM 600 and FM 101.1 Talk Radio, WBOB. This is a regular segment on the Hugh Hewitt Show, and I talk with Vic Mattis. His co-host of the Getting Hammered podcast. He is the editor of the weekend edition of the Washington Free Beacon. And today he was talking with Mary Catherine Ham about Filipino food and how it's taking America by storm. Vic, I got to admit to you, I was unaware that such a thing existed. Tell me about Filipino food.
That's like a cultural, racial microaggression, Hugh. How dare you? Yes.
Sorry.
Filipino food is this wonderful mixture of, like, if you imagine Chinese meets Spanish, and I think that's the result, is Filipino food. So you have noodles on the one hand, and you have, Spanish dishes on another, a lot of them with Spanish names, like, arroz valenciana, for example. It's really delicious things. It's also very savory dishes, a lot of things that are vinegar based, but not everything. Meat that falls off the bones. A lot of it is Spanish, again, like chicken adobo. The Spanish sort of spread their cuisine around the world. I've run into Guatemalans and Puerto Ricans who actually have similar food that the Filipinos have in common.
Now, Vic, you named something in particular that Mary Catherine's kids like, some kind of a pastry, and I can't remember what it was. Do you remember what it was?
Yes, I'm not sure if it was the pastry so much as it's a root vegetable called ube, UBE.
That's it.
And it's purple. And you're beginning to see it everywhere, including, at my local ice cream shop, there's now an ube flavored ice cream. It's just a very sweet, citrusy flavor. It's very nice.
Can you spell ube for me?
UBE. That's it.
Okay, I can remember that. Is that like an acceptable Scrabble word, or is that a proper noun?
Yes. No, absolutely. That's like a root vegetable, like taro root, or like a sweet potato, ube, UBE. That is absolutely acceptable in Scrabble.
All right, now this leads me to the discussion of the Filipino cardinal, who is now tied in the bookmakers' lead for the next pontiff. What do you know about him? I can't even say his name.
Yes, it's Tagle, Tagle. That's how I'm pronouncing it. He seems very charming. He seems very likable, and he seems very much a man of the left. I know priests, pastors that have a similar demeanor to him. I think it's all well and good to a certain extent. I think what the church needs right now, and what others have been saying, is not only somebody who brings the warmth, friendliness, openness, and compassion to the church and to its followers, but somebody who's going to bring moral and also doctrinal clarity, which is something that I think Pope Francis, may he rest in peace, was missing. What I've heard, Hugh, is that because you have 135 or so cardinals, that's a lot who are voting. They don't oftentimes know each other. We may have an answer. They start voting, I believe, on Wednesday. We may have an answer by Friday. My understanding from people I've talked to, it's not going to be somebody of the far left or the far right, but somebody sort of in the middle or slightly to the left of or the right of the middle. And again, I think what we need is somebody who offers that doctrinal clarity. And we need to find out what happened, for example, with the church in China. What deals were made. We need an open.
Why the Parolin, the Prime Minister, the Vatican Secretary of State, he did this deal with the Chi-Coms that nobody likes, and that is allegedly hurting him. But Cardinal Tagle is the guy who's tied with him in the bookmaking. I don't know how you make book on 135 voters when you can't talk to them and they can't tell you anything. It's not like it's a football game. I really have no idea how you would do that. But what's the reputation for Tagle in the Philippines? Do you have any idea?
No, I mean, my sense is that he's much beloved in the Philippines. In the past, if you remember in the 1980s into the 90s, there was a very famous Filipino cardinal who had the amazing name of Cardinal Sin, S-I-N. And he was sort of an antagonist to Ferdinand Marcos. And obviously, he was never in play to become the Pope. Tagle, it would be the first obvious outsider from Europe / South America. But again, I'm rooting for the Africans. And if you can get somebody like Cardinal Sarah, I mean, that's wishful thinking.
Sarah, I have been listening to his book, and it's The Day is Nearly Gone or something like that. And he's very very transparent in his belief that the church is in crisis and needs to rebuild from the ground up. And I think he's 79 years old, or he may actually be about to turn 80. And if it's a long conclave, he loses his vote in June. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, that's right. There's not necessarily an age limit to who can become pope, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a cardinal. And they've done TV shows about this, as you know. But you do have to be under a certain age to vote. But again, I think we may have an answer by Friday.
Yeah, you are the most optimistic. I keep thinking 135 people, they barely know each other. They've been going to these endless meetings. It sounds like the convention from hell, if you ask me, where they sit around inside of a big auditorium and they each give speeches on the state of the church, and they're supposed to somehow reach a consensus from that. Do you really think Friday?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back in the previous selections of Pope Francis and before him Pope Benedict and even John Paul II, it took in some cases 2, in some cases 3 days, but it didn't seem to be more than that when they started voting in the conclave. So that's my general sense, is that it's not going to take more than 3 days.
They thought Francis was going to be a short-term pope. I don't think anyone had 13 years on their bingo card. So I don't think they're going to go for a short-term pope this time. I think the guy I like is the guy in Jerusalem, and I understand he's not really a conservative, but that he's managed to keep everybody happy in the Holy Land. I find that to be quite a recommendation. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, there's also the key to longevity in order to provide more stability for the papacy. And again, when you think about these past popes, it's very complex in terms of how we figure out, are they of the left? Are they of the right? It's very complicated. Francis, is a complicated legacy. It's not necessarily strictly of the left. He was still firmly pro-life, as you know.
Vic, Matt, it's always a pleasure. You should go like and subscribe Getting Hammered. He and Mary Catherine cover everything from cuisine to Canada. And today we covered Cardinals. So get a little bit more of it than a taste of it by signing up for Getting Hammered wherever podcasts are available. I mentioned earlier in the first hour that Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, was in the White House today with Donald Trump. They talked, since I was just talking popes, with Vic Mattis of Getting Hammered. Let's play that exchange between Roger Goodell. Well, actually, Roger doesn't say anything. The president takes a question from the audience. It's kind of a stupid question from a reporter who thinks Catholics are offended. We weren't offended. Cut number 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some Catholics were not so happy about the image of you looking like the Pope.
Oh, I see. You mean they can't take a joke? You don't mean the Catholics. You mean the fake news media. Not the Catholics loved it. I had nothing to do with it. Somebody made up a picture of me dressed like the Pope, and they put it out on the internet. That's not me that did it. I have no idea where it came from. Maybe it was AI. But I know nothing about it. I just saw it.
And I just want to assure everyone, Catholics, I don't know any Catholics who were offended by that. It was kind of funny. I also want you to hear the NFL draft announcement, cut number 3.
Fox News alert, and live to the White House where President Trump is now speaking, making a major sports announcement. Roger Goodell from the NFL at his side. Let's listen.
I'm pleased to reveal that the 2027 NFL draft, that's a big thing, will be held right here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., on the National Mall, and you get a little glimpse of it. I was just saying to Roger, I don't think there's ever been anything like that. That's a good idea. In fact, maybe we could use it for other things also. I have an idea. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be something that nobody else will ever be able to duplicate that, I don't suspect. It's very exciting. Every year, hundreds of young football players have their dreams come true.
I cannot wait. I just literally cannot wait. I'm across the river. I'm in Virginia. Studio Beltway is inside the Beltway inside Virginia. And I'm going to get across. I'm going to take extra relief factor and go over there and stand. But they're expecting 1 million people over 3 days. Browns have 2. They're already on the clock because I don't think Jacksonville. Sorry, WBOB listeners. I just don't think you're going to win any games. And therefore, the Browns are on the clock already. But I'm going to take my relief factor. If you're watching on the Salem News Network, I've got my Salem News channel. I've got my relief factor bag in hand. I'm here to tell you that it works. It really does work. You're a new listener, right? Especially if you're in Jacksonville on AM 600 101.1 FM, WBOB. You haven't heard me talk about Relief Factor. I have been taking the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. I've been taking it for 10 years. A lot of people offer me a lot of money to take supplements. I won't do it. Not interested in it. I like Relief Factor. It works. Now, I trundle a lot. I try and do at least 20 and sometimes as many as 30, and in the summer, 40 miles a week. And trundling is not fast. I used to run races, then I used to run. Now I just trundle. I'm getting older. I'm getting slower. But Relief Factor keeps the minor aches and pains away. And if that's you, and you've got something nagging at you right now, simply call them, 1-800-4-RELIEF, 1-800-4 and the word relief, or head over to their website, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com, $19.95 for 3 weeks. Whether you're watching on the Salem News Channel, listening on the Salem Radio Network, or one of our great affiliates, including a brand new affiliate, WBOB, AM 600, 101.1 FM in Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome aboard. The Borg has picked you up and taken control of all of you, and we are very pleased that Jacksonville is now part. We've got all of Florida, and that's great because you're going to have a wild governor's race this year. Absolutely wild. I don't know who's going to be in it, but we'll cover it top to bottom. And I think your new senator is going to have to be elected as well, even though it's not time for her term. I think she'll be on the, but whatever it is, I'll cover it. I cover it. We got Tampa and Sarasota and the Panhandle and Orlando, and we love Florida. We cover Florida. Not as much as we love and cover Ohio, but we cover it all. We cover the news as it happens. The news you need, the analysis you want is all right here on the Hugh Hewitt Show, including the president today in the Oval. And I want to go back and play for you if you just tuned in. The draft is coming to Washington, D.C., cut number 3.
Fox News alert and live to the White House where President Trump is now speaking, making a major sports announcement. Roger Goodell from the NFL at his side. Let's listen.
I'm pleased to reveal that the 2027 NFL draft, that's a big thing, will be held right here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., on the National Mall. And you get a little glimpse of it. I was just saying to Roger, I don't think there's ever been anything like that. That's a good idea. In fact, maybe we could use it for other things also. I have an idea. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be something that nobody else will ever be able to duplicate that, I don't suspect. It's very exciting. Every year, hundreds of young football players have their dreams come true as the NFL teams across the land, and you just saw that last week. Select the best young players in America to join their ranks. Hundreds of thousands of football fans will travel all across our country to cheer them on in person. We expect, would you say, more than 100,000 people, I think. What is the capacity would you think it can hold? Because the mall can actually hold up to 1 million people if you go all the way back. What do you think?
Over 3 days, we'll be over 1 million.
Oh, yeah, you're going to be.
1 million people. I will be among them. I will go. I've never been to a draft. They held it in Cleveland a couple of years ago, and I wished I'd been there because it sounds like a lot of fun. And the Browns will be on the clock twice. I'm a Browns fan, you Jacksonville people. Thank you for your first-round draft choice. Let's go on. You also got a question about reopening Alcatraz. Cut number 4.
To reopen Alcatraz, how will you use it? How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I guess I was supposed to be a movie maker. We started with the movie making, and we'll end. I mean, it represents something very strong, very powerful in terms of law and order. Our country needs law and order. Alcatraz is, I would say, the ultimate, right? Alcatraz, Sing Sing and Alcatraz, the movies. But it's right now a museum, believe it or not. A lot of people go there. It housed the most violent criminals in the world, and nobody ever escaped. One person almost got there, but they, as you know the story, they found his clothing rather badly ripped up, and it was a lot of shark bites, a lot of problems. Nobody's ever escaped from Alcatraz, and just represented something strong having to do with law and order. We need law and order in this country, and so we're going to look at it. Some of the people up here are going to be working very hard on that, and we had a little conversation. I think it's going to be very interesting. We'll see if we can bring it back in large form, add a lot. But I think it represents something.
In large, what he's doing is he's messaging. And I had a comment this weekend on some show. He is always messaging. What does Alcatraz get you? It only holds 250 people. It's a message. It's a message that we'll use every facility that we possibly can to house whomever needs to be housed for as long as they need to be housed. He also mentioned the film industry, so I want to go to that clip as well. Cut number 8. It's created quite a lot of news today because they're not sure how you actually put tariffs on the movie business. But he spoke to that. Cut number 8.
Explain a little bit about how you would implement tariffs on the film industry, kind of how that would work.
Well, that's a different story, but our film industry has been decimated by other countries taking them out, and also by incompetence, like in Los Angeles. The governor is a grossly incompetent man. He's just allowed it to be taken away from, Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't do very much of that business. They have the nice sign and everything's good, but they don't do very much. A lot of it's been taken to other countries, and a big proportion. And I'm actually going to meet with some because, there's some advantages, I guess, and I'm not looking to hurt the industry. I want to help the industry. But they're given financing by other countries. They've given a lot of things, and the industry was decimated. If you look at how little is done in this country now, you think we were the ones. We used to do 100, not long ago, 100%. Now we do almost like very little. It's shocking. Are you in that business too? Because he's in so many businesses. You could explain it, but it's not a good situation. So we're going to meet with the industry. I want to make sure they're happy with it because we're all about jobs. That's all what it's very important. It's a big industry, but it's an industry now that's it's really left. It's abandoned the USA where it started. And we'll get it back.
I'm not sure it's abandoned. I do have a couple of filmmaker buddies who are up in Canada because they offer such incredible tax benefits to produce in Canada. He also talked about the Nordstream blasts. Cut number 7.
2.5 years ago, the Nordstream pipeline blew up. Yeah. And despite what people like John Brennan and all the hawks said, you were one person who said Russia probably did not blow up its own pipeline.
Yeah, if you can believe. They said Russia blew it up, yeah.
And so I'm wondering now that you're president, if you would consider launching a formal investigation into what happened there and who actually did blow it up.
Well, probably if I asked certain people, I'd be able to tell you without having to waste a lot of money on an investigation. But I think a lot of people know who blew it up. But I was the one that blew it up originally because I wouldn't let it be built. And then when Biden got in, he allowed it to be built. And it's very interesting. But I think Russia, with the price of oil right now, oil's gone down. I think we're in a good position to settle. They want to settle. Ukraine wants to settle. If I weren't president, nobody would be settling. They're losing 5,000 people a day. Think of it. Here we talk about football. They're losing 5,000 people on average a week, mostly Russian soldiers and Ukrainian soldiers, 5,000 a week, not including people that are, killed as missiles go into areas that they shouldn't be. It's a very terrible thing, and I think we've come a long way, and it could be something will happen, but hopefully it will. As you know, President Putin just announced a 3-day ceasefire, which doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot if you knew where we started from, because they were not. We had a president that for 3 years didn't speak to Putin, and it all shouldn't have happened. This is a war that should have never happened. And you're going to be very disappointed when you find out the real number of people that were killed. It's far greater, many times greater, I believe, but far greater than the numbers that you're putting out. It's a very, very deadly, horrible war.
And then he dropped one out of left field comment that really surprised me. Cut number 6.
What we thought we'd do is a self-deport, where we're going to pay each one a certain amount of money, and we're going to get them a beautiful flight back to where they came from, and they have a period of time. And if they make it, we're going to work with them so that maybe someday, with a little work, they can come back in if they're good people, if they're the kind of people that we want in our company, industrious people that could love our country. And if they're not, they won't. But it will give them a path to becoming, to coming back into the country. If they miss that limit, they're going to be taken out of our country. And they will never get a path to come back in, and it'll be a much tougher process. And it's called self-deportation. And by doing that, you're talking about so many millions of people.
That's a very interesting concept. You got to admit, that's a very interesting concept. The idea that, okay, you came in illegally, you probably spent your life savings to pay a coyote to get you up here from Guatemala, or maybe you came from somewhere in Africa, or maybe you're one of the tens of thousands of Chinese that made their way somehow to the Darien Gap and walked up from there. We know it cost you everything. Here's a check and here's a ticket. Go back to where now. That's not going to work with the people who escaped from China if they're genuinely escaped, because they'll get killed if they go back. I don't know what we do with those people. They might be spies. They might not be spies. I don't know. But if you're just a peasant or someone who left Venezuela because there is no work and you got a crazy dictator, maybe we pay you to go back. Maybe that's an interesting concept. Haven't heard that one before, paying people to leave the country. But again, Trump thinks in Trump ways, which are not your ways and my ways. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. Joined now by Dr. Michael Oren, former Israel ambassador to the United States. Dr. Oren, good to see you. I've got two stories here, one from the Financial Times. Israel Security Cabinet approves expansion of Gaza offensive. And from the Wall Street Journal, Israel approves plan to occupy Gaza, control aid distribution. What did they approve and how hard is it going to be?
Okay, what they approved was basically to have an expanded ground operation in Gaza. There's a big question whether they're going to wait until President Trump completes his visit to the Middle East. It's coming in about 2 weeks, and ramp up the pressure on Hamas entirely. Basically, push the Palestinian civilian population into a corner of Gaza, and change the rules of the game. And I think we've talked about this before in this program, Hugh. I've been in favor of this for well over a year. That we have been negotiating with the wrong sort of currency, the wrong tender, if you will, with the Hamas. We've been negotiating with Hamas saying, well, you give us a certain number of hostages and we'll give you a certain number of ceasefire days and a great number of Palestinian terrorist prisoners released from our jails. And now we're going to change it because Hamas doesn't care about released prisoners. Hamas doesn't care about how many Palestinians are killed, doesn't really care about ceasefires. It cares about one thing, and that's land. So we take land. And we say, okay, you want land back? You give us the hostages back. If you're not giving the hostages back, we'll say goodbye to the land. And that's what the Israeli army has done. In the past, we've gone into various neighborhoods of Gaza and killed Hamas terrorists and then withdrawn, and Hamas comes back. But this time, we're going to take it and hold it and keep that pressure up. So that's the plan. What are the difficulties? They are legion, those difficulties. First of all, the Army. The Army is tired. We've had soldiers who've served well over 400 days in combat. That's unheard of in international military terms. These are people who have left their families, left their jobs, have all sorts of psychological difficulties at this point. And the question is, they're going to have a big call up. Who's going to come? Second question is there are political difficulties in this country, particularly the question of whether ultra-Orthodox Jews, citizens of the state, will serve in the army. And how do you have a situation where these young people are being called up for another, 60, 80 days of combat, and the ultra-Orthodox are staying at home and studying? That is almost an impossible situation for the state of Israel. And then there's an international framework. Will there be condemnations in the Security Council? What will be the ultimate position of the Trump administration? On that issue, really nobody knows.
Well, I do think when Ambassador Michael Waltz gets there, he'll be working closely with President Trump. I can't imagine any negative Security Council resolutions getting through. But to go back to the clear and hold approach, how many soldiers does it take to do that? Gaza is not that big, but it's got that underground subterranean network. So it's not really what we see on the top. It's what we don't see that makes it a difficult place to clear and hold.
It is very difficult to clear and hold. We don't have that many soldiers. We're not the United States of America. We're a country of less than 10 million people. How many actually serve in the army is 21% of the country is Arab. 13% is ultra-Orthodox. You're really cutting down to a small percentage of the population relative that can serve in the military. We can still call up as many as 360,000 reservists. It's the equivalent of about 20 million Americans. I often say that's 4 million Americans more than served in all of World War II. But still, it's a tremendous burden on these families. It's really quite unimaginable. So I know from people on my own staff who tell me, they're in special forces. They tell me they're exhausted, they're tired, and they have young kids at home, and they don't get to see their kids for months at a time. So it's an extremely difficult situation. And at the same time, as you know, we have been pummeled by rockets from the Houthis in Yemen. One hit not so far from where I'm sitting here right yesterday. We were in the bomb shelter. It hit in our airport. And Israeli Air Force struck at Yemen tonight at a number of targets in cooperation and coordination with the United States Armed Forces. But the Houthis, like Hamas, they don't care about their own civilians. They don't care if they're starved. They don't care if they're blown apart. And it's very difficult to deter them. And beyond it all is the huge, certainly existential issue, and that is the Iran nuclear program. And what is Israel going to do about that?
Well, now that brings me around to, I understand what's going to go on in Gaza, and it's going to last a long time. It's going to take a lot of people. Does Israel have the resolve to strike at Iran if Donald Trump hesitates, or if he's involved in these endless negotiations with them? I'm not sure that they'll be endless, but we know from past experience they tend to drag everything out as long as they can.
Well, I know that Israel does. I know that I do, and I know the people I talk to do. I'm not sure that the decision makers at the top do. They've balked several times, and have Iran struck us twice with long-range ballistic missiles. We did not strike back at their nuclear program, and we've dithered on it, and I hope it's not too late. Israel does not have the capabilities that the United States have. We don't have strategic bombers. But our F-15s and our F-35s can do a heck of a lot of damage, and they can penetrate. They can penetrate yards upon yards of concrete, as we learned in the strike against Mr. Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah in Beirut. He was hiding beneath 60 feet of concrete, and we got him. So, yes, we do have the ability. I'd like to see also that we have the political will.
Now, last question, Michael. The families of the hostages are primarily against this operation, if I'm reading the media correctly, and they've lost the argument with the government. How long does it take for the rats to get cornered and either the hostages freed or resolution of where they are or are not arrived at?
Well, first of all, it's not all the hostage families. There are hostage families who concur with the government's position, and certainly don't want their loved ones to be traded for Palestinian terrorists who are going to go out and kill other people's loved ones on a much grander scale. There are people like that. But having said that, the majority of the hostage families are against the operation. They feel that this will basically doom their loved ones because Hamas won't give them up. And we've known from experience that when Hamas gets cornered and under pressure, it doesn't give up hostages, it executes the hostages. And how long this will take, whether there's some breaking point for Hamas, actually, nobody knows. We are dealing with an enemy that not only cares nothing about its own population, but prefers death to surrender. Not many people in the world like that. These people have the long view. They're thinking about history and how they'll be remembered by Muslim populations around the world. They want to be remembered as heroes and not as cowards who surrendered to the Israelis. And so it's going to be brutal. And there's no.
Have you asked anyone? Have you asked anyone who's been in the tunnels what percentage of the tunnels remain to be destroyed and how difficult that operation will be? I really can't imagine trying to blow up the New York City subway system, for example, and that's like this. We got a minute, Michael.
I think about 40% of the tunnels have been blown up so far. From what I understand from engineers I've talked to, you don't have to blow up all the tunnels because they're sort of in a star configuration. So if you blow up the center one, you don't have to blow up all the spangles of the star. But Israel just simply runs out of C4 explosive material to blow them up. They're vast, and you try to maybe fill them up with concrete. The Egyptians had a process of filling them up with seawater. You can do that as well. But the problem is the hostages. We don't know where the hostages are. And so the problem is not just a lack of explosive materials or ways of stopping the tunnels. It's who's in the tunnel and whose lives are liable to be lost if you blow up those tunnels.
Dr. Michael Oren, follow him on X at Dr. Michael Oren on Substack as well as the Free Press. He's a fellow at the Wilson Center, and he's a welcome guest here always. Thank you, Dr. Oren. I know you have tried to forget the campaign of 2024, but Joe Concha is here to make sure that you don't forget it. He's written this brand new book, very funny book, the greatest comeback ever inside Trump's big, beautiful campaign with the famous McDonald picture on the cover. Congratulations, Joe. This is pretty funny. I'm surprised you agreed to try and write a book about this campaign because it was such a ridiculous campaign, but you did. Congratulations. Who came up with the idea to put all of the quotes on the back, including the Rick Wilson quote, which I had written down from page 197, which is a memorable one?
Yes, Trump's going to get wrecked. He's going to get destroyed. You know, it's going to be a total blowout. I don't have it in front of me, so my apologies. But there were several quotes in the back of that book, Hugh, from Republicans as well. Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Joe Scarborough, kind of a Republican, I guess, all predicting an easy Kamala victory. And then at the bottom, of course, there's my quote, where in October 2024, I saw some polling out of the Teamsters rank and file, and that did it for me, showing that Trump was up big with that largest union in the country. And I said, Trump's going to win this. He's going to win it quite easily. Save the tape, play it back if I'm wrong. This is how it's going to end. And sure enough, for once, I got something right. Yeah,
I want to play I want to read the Rick. I've got your book. I've got the greatest comeback ever. The Rick Wilson quote on page 181. It's also on the back of the book in part. Number one, Trump's going to lose. He's going to lose badly. He's going to be wrecked. I don't know how the electoral college count's going to be at the end of this, but it's going to get loud. It's going to get hard for him. Their panic is extraordinary. This is a campaign in free fall. You also quote Larry Sabato as saying, his crystal ball has got Trump losing. That's the same crystal ball that had Hillary getting 347 electoral votes in 2016. Why are so many people invested in being so wrong? Is there no downside, Joe, to their being so wrong so often?
Because they can't put their emotions aside. It's hope casting is the old term, right? They really, really want it to happen to the point where they delude themselves into believing it, Hugh. And, I mean, look at Ann Selzer, for example. She was the gold standard, right? Never gets it wrong. What she says, you could take to the bank. And sure enough, 3 days before the election, she comes out with this shock poll showing that Kamala Harris is up in Iowa by 3 points. And I remember hearing that, and I'm like, that is mathematically impossible because Donald Trump had won that state by double digits. And you're going to tell me that Kamala Harris not only reversed that, but something like to a tune of 21 points from what Joe Biden was trailing Donald Trump in that state. And with so many Republicans that are registered there, they clearly outnumber Democrats. And I just thought that, okay, this can't be real. And sure enough, it was. And Ann Selzer was wrong by about 17 points. Trump won by 14 points in Iowa. And then she rightly retired afterwards. So we saw that throughout the entire campaign. The same, I'm not going to call it mistake because that sounds like it was an error that wasn't intentional. Intentional delusion, which was to oversample Democrats by 7, 8 points every time they do a poll, when actually we're pretty much a 50-50 country. You can even make the argument right of center. And that's why these polls are wrong every time. They will not change their methodology. And as a result, they look stupid once again.
Now, Joe Concha, you kind of answered my question because I had written down the Ann Selzer poll. That rocked me a little bit. I was feeling fairly confident, but not as confident as you, that Trump was going to win. But Ann Selzer is, quote, the gold standard. She'd never been wrong before. Then all of a sudden, not only is she wrong, she's Steve Sachs trying to throw to first base. She can't do it. Oh. She gets the yips. Now, do you think that was intentional on her part, or do you think that was just that her brain broke and thus her polling broke?
She, when she tried to explain it, she said, well, the abortion issue has become a very big issue in this country, and I think it's going to make a big difference. And I'm like, wait, you're not supposed to think. You're supposed to poll people, and then they do the thinking for you as far as where their heads are at. So when she started to say that, I think that the abortion issue is going to be a bigger deal in Iowa, and women are really going to come out to vote. At this point now, she's into predictions, right? She's not into the sort of things that pollsters put into polls, which is numbers that come to you from people you survey. Your own feelings aren't supposed to be involved, but sure enough, she let that happen. And look, again, I'll go back to that Teamsters poll because those were the polls that really mattered to me. And when Joe Biden was in the race, he's always seen as pro-union Joe. So he was he was polling at +10 over Trump when he was in the race. Yes. Yeah. When Kamala was installed, she's +30. I'm sorry. Trump is +30 over Kamala. It's a 40-point swing. And I said, if she doesn't have the union vote there, but United Auto Workers, steel workers, the restaurant workers, she doesn't have union, she doesn't have enough black votes, Latino votes, she's going to lose this election because there's not enough votes to get for her to win.
Stand by, Joe. I'm going to come right back because I have to get even with you. You made a snide remark about 1972 engines and Dodge Darts. I had a Dodge Dart, and so I want to stand up for the Dodge Dart. They have much more CPU than Joe Biden did in this campaign. Don't go anywhere. The book, America, if you want to see it, is the greatest comeback ever by Joe Concha inside Trump's big, beautiful campaign. It's hilarious, especially the secret that on Joe's one trip on Air Force One, there was not McDonald's. Joe, what did they serve? Wendy's?
They served Wendy's because there's only a Wendy's in that particular airport. Otherwise, it would have been McDonald's, of course. But yeah, cheeseburger, tater tots, French fries, Diet Coke. Diet Coke's the thing with Trump.
That might mean you're never coming back on Air Force One because you revealed the secret that he'll settle for Wendy's. Don't go anywhere. I'm talking with Joe Concha, the author of the greatest comeback ever, brand new book on campaign 2024. It's got the iconic Donald Trump waving Happy Meal wave at you. On page 94, Joe, you're right. You think you might hate the media too much? ? Well, you don't. And then you pile up example after example of not just bias, but I mean the kind of ridiculous bias that's slapstick, right? It's almost I've been in the media for 35 years. I've never seen anything like this campaign.
Journalism morphed into complete activism. And, you know, it used to be subtle, or they would try to hide it and claim they were objective. Now it's just like, screw it. You know, we want Kamala to win, or Joe Biden to win for that matter. But, you know, the real breaking point was when we would see Joe Biden shaking hands with the air, or he's like that kid from the movie The Sixth Sense where he could talk to dead people. Or in this case, it would be like he's talking to Francois Mitterrand, who died like 30 years ago, and he's saying they just had a conversation yesterday. He can't remember the names of his own cabinet members. And you go down the line, he needed a list of reporters to call on, and he barely did press conferences, and he would go to Delaware for 3 or 4 days, and we would never see the visitors log. So on and on. You see this, and you know that his brain has turned to applesauce well before that debate in Atlanta, June 27th. But yet we have the media telling us, no, those are actually cheap fakes. That's Republicans and the Trump campaign trying to deceive you into thinking that Joe Biden is fine when actually he is as sharp as Stephen Hawking and has the running capacity of Saquon Barkley, physically. Like, this is a guy that's on. And once the media tried to sell us on that, and clearly that wasn't the case, and the debate completely exposed that, there was no recovering from that at that point.
Well, what you write about the debate, and I haven't used the term yet, and now I'm going to not ever forget it. He was gap-mouthed. And there is that slack-jawed look that comes with confusion and age. And you'll see it in retirement homes, and you'll see it in the ICUs. You'll see it whenever tragedy strikes with age, that it gets slack, and he is that way. I don't suppose you caught any of his return speech to the Americans with Disability Association or something like that. The last speech, I think he'll get paid for. Did you see it?
Yeah, and that was about 2 weeks ago. And it's a shame that either it's his wife, I'm not sure who's pushing him back out there, but just let the man retire in peace. It just to continue to try to make him relevant somehow. Democrats don't even want him out there at this point. Obviously, he's seen
Kamala and the elephants.
Yeah.
Did you see Kamala and the elephants?
I did very much. The cackle has not gone anywhere, and she's a human Chernobyl, Hugh, when she's outside of a teleprompter. No question about it.
Well, let's go to the fact that you write at length. She skipped the Al Smith dinner. And I thought she skipped the Al Smith dinner for one reason, which is don't give credence to Donald Trump's return. In fact, she can't do humor. And you point that out. And, it's one of those obvious things you don't think about until you read someone else writing it. But it's true. She can't do humor. By the way, there are a lot of people who can't. I can't do humor. I did the Ruthless podcast. I told these guys, don't expect me to be funny. I don't do funny. And so let's not do funny. And we didn't do funny. But you're supposed to do funny, and there's supposed to be joke writers, Joe, that she could work with.
That's exactly right. And that's why she didn't do it, for starters. But also, I think, Hugh, because Donald Trump is so good at it that she knew that he's like the Dean Martin of political roasters, right? So she knew sitting next to him, that humanizes him, right? Because when he was at the 2016 dinner that I was at, he and Hillary were smiling, and they were yucking it up with Cardinal Dolan. She couldn't be seen in that light, because once you accuse somebody of being Hitler and a fascist, you can't possibly break bread with them, right? So I think that was the thought process, along with the humor part. But then Trump killed it that night, right? I mean, he had some great one-liners. He said, this is the first time I've been to Manhattan in some years where I haven't received a subpoena. That's kind of funny. Or when he said, the Democrats keep telling us that there are more than two genders, and I didn't believe them until I met Tim Walz. That's funny.
By the way,
he was gonna
your
hold the
chapter on Tim Walz, the Midwestern dad who wasn't, that's pretty good. Let me, however, go to the key fact. In a month, August, Trump and Vance did 34 interviews. Harris and Walz did 1. Shouldn't the media be pulling an alarm every day that there's something wrong with that, Joe Concha?
Oh, completely. And remember the first 6 weeks of the campaign after Kamala was installed Soviet style as the nominee, she did 0 interviews. And we're talking, Hugh, like even if The View called, they're like, no, can't do it. Or let's see, Rachel Maddow wants to have an interview with you. Oh, can't do it. They wouldn't even let her do the T-ball interviews. And what does that tell you? So, and then when they finally did one, that being Kamala, with CNN and Dana Bash, Tim Walz had to be there, and it looked like a parent-teacher conference. Like, he's sitting there, he's not saying anything. He's like 5 inches taller than she is. She's in this little chair somewhere. And again, she went to CNN, which no one's watching, while Trump's doing Joe Rogan, right? And then he's going 3 hours with him. Meanwhile, Kamala tells Rogan's people, or at least Kamala's people tell Rogan, okay, she could come on, but she has to come to us. We're only going to do an hour, and we want the topics beforehand. And Rogan's like, no, I'm not doing that. And that those sort of things help lose her the election.
Well, I think this is going to be a bestseller, and I want to finish by talking to you about page 195, why Trump won.
Thank you.
Inflation, crime, border wars, woke identity politics, censorship, weaponization of the government against political opponents, blatant dishonesty. That's why Kamala and the Dems lost. And, it really is that simple. I don't think they'll ever commit that bad of a campaign again. Do you? I mean, and you raise a question. How do you blow through $1.5 billion in 3 months? I don't know how you do that, actually, Joe.
And then you end up with a deficit. It's really hard to do. I guess you blow through by paying Oprah's production company $1 million to interview you. Now, Oprah's worth more than $1 billion. You would think because you're trying to defeat Hitler that Oprah would say, hey, this one's kind of on the house, so don't worry, no charge. And sure, if they pay $1 million there, they're paying millions to Beyonce, Springsteen, all these people to perform at her rallies to make the crowd look bigger. And it's just amazing that they can blow through that kind of money. And what did they have to show for it? Not one swing state, not the popular vote. And obviously the Republicans win back the Senate. They hold the House. I mean, I've never seen such a poor return on investment since Enron.
Have you seen any of her people come out with a postmortem yet? We've got the first book by John Allen and Amy Parnes that talks a little bit about the fight. But has anyone on her team come out and said, here's why we lost? Because that's usually pretty SOP.
No, they've made a lot of excuses, right? Like Jen O'Malley, Dylan, and David Plouffe, Steph Cutter. They were the Obama people that took over this campaign, and they ran a 2012 campaign, which didn't apply for 2024. But no, all they did was make a lot of excuses that, oh, well, they were up against it. It was only 100 days. The excuse I hear, which is so laughable, Hugh, is that if only the American people had more time to get to know her. Actually, her high point was when she wasn't speaking in interviews, and her low point was when people got to know her.
Yeah,
so, no, I don't think there's any come to Jesus moment.
Before the convention. Congratulations,
right.
Joe Concha. The greatest comeback ever in bookstores everywhere, available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you buy your books. The greatest comeback ever. I love talking to Joe Concha. I'm going to be on Special Report tonight. Hope you'll tune over to that right after we're done here. I'll sprint downtown and make the set and give my opinion on what Israel's going to be doing in Gaza. Don't forget, however, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you recognize this bag. That's the Relief Factor bag. If you're not watching on the Salem News Channel, then you know I always mention it at least once an hour, and I take it in the first hour as I did today. And I always do Relief Factor because, like today, did my 4 miles in the rain. I even broke one of my rules because I spent all weekend in Savannah eating, and I had a grand old time at the Job Creators Network. But when you don't, I mean, I walked around Savannah, but walking around is not really exercise, especially in the South, where everyone moves at about 1/10 of a mile an hour. And so it's not really exercise. So took my Relief Factor, though, took it with me down to the hostess city of the South, Savannah. Beautiful city, by the way. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous city. And took my Relief Factor and walked on their funny bricks, and no problem from there. But I had to get back out there today and did right away. Got my 4 miles in. Just want to remind you, 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, or go to their website and find the starter pack, $19.95. That's at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Let me close with a word about Joe Concha's book. Joe's gone now, so I'm not shining him on. He's very, very funny. And in retrospect, 2024 was a very, very funny campaign. It was also somewhat tragic. It was tragic because Joe Biden was infirm and incompetent. It was tragic because Kamala Harris should have been nowhere near the Oval Office. I don't know, it was scarier having it basically run by a committee about whom we know nothing, other than Jill Biden, the chief of staff, Jake Sullivan were on it, and not the president. He wasn't making decisions, or if he was making decisions, they were being discarded. Or that because of the weird dynamics of 2020, when Joe Biden promised he would put a black woman on the ticket, he backed himself into a corner where he ended up with Kamala Harris, who of course can't be president. It's really just a very simple question of the capacity to do the job. And that involves communicating with the American people. That involves some very simple blocking and tackling. And if you can't do it, you can't do it, and she can't do it. Now, I don't know if she's going to run for governor of California. If she does, I think she's going to get smoked by whomever is the runoff. California is the jungle primary, which means it can be 2 Democrats, it can be 2 Republicans. At least 2 or 3 other Democrats are running. Javier Becerra, Katie Porter, the former Congresswoman, Becerra, the former HHS Secretary and former Congressman. We've also got Antonio Villaraigosa, the former mayor of Los Angeles, is declared. And our buddy Steve Hilton. 1 Republican is in there. So if Hilton gets all the Republican votes and he's up against Kamala Harris, California might actually win a governorship. Because the more you see of the vice, it's just what Joe's book reminds you of. We dodged a bullet, America. We really did dodge a bullet. See you on Special Report.